One of the most important things in picking the perfect pet snake for you is how big the thing is in the first place. So today, let's go over the best snake at every size. The cool thing about snakes in comparison to a lot of other animals on the planet is they come in such variable sizes. You've got snakes that literally, thread snakes are this big, and then you've got snakes that are 25 plus feet. So it really depends what you want, and not all snakes are good as pets. So let's go through from micro to XL, every category, which one's best for you, in my opinion. Starting with micro snakes, I want to disclaim that I don't think it's a good idea to get ringneck snakes or thread snakes, or even rough green snakes for most people, so I'm gonna stay away from those, although if you can find all those captive bred, go for it, just most of the time they're not. Let's go over ones that most people can find most of the time to make it easy for you, so you're not on a wild goose chase. So let's start off with Kenyan sand boas and rubber boas. Now, I know that there's smaller colubrids out there, and I think hognose snakes make a great example too, but I don't want to give you analysis paralysis. Let's focus on rubber boas and Kenyan sand boas. And the difference is going to be, do you want something that likes it cooler or warmer? Do you like something that's going to be out a little bit more or almost always dug into the sand? That is one of the things. And also, what's it look like? If you want a drab looking animal that is really cool, very unlikely to bite you, and one of the only North American boa species, get yourself a rubber boa. They're one of my favorite species. I had one for a while. I love them. And I think they're great for most people if you want a small snake, because I mean, a snake that gets less than 2 feet most of the time, just like rubber boas and Kenyan sand boas do, is a perfect size, and I would consider micro. Now, there are other options too, hognose snakes, for example, but the thing with a hognose snake, if you're looking for a micro snake, you're maybe new. I think in the most part, you're new. And new people sometimes don't want a snake that isn't gonna eat for them, which, you know, if you get a small hognose snake, that's part of it. Plus, hognose snakes, they're really cool, but they can be a little cantankerous and spicy, and that might put new people off. With that said, I think they're a great species for new people. I just think, in the most part, if you want a snake for handling that's gonna grip onto you, then you want a boa species like a Kenyan or definitely a rubber, whereas a hognose snake, they're derpy, they don't constrict their prey, they don't hold on to you, you have to hold on to them, they will fall right to the ground. So I just, for that reason, think that maybe those are better in the micro category, but let's just scale it up one size. Now keep in mind, the bigger we get in terms of snakes, the bigger the smell is gonna be too. But you know what doesn't smell? Me, thanks to today's sponsor, Mando. Here's the deal, it's summertime, everybody smells some of the time, but I do way less, and that's thanks to Mando's products. And I like the all-in-one style of them. This is for pits, feet, and other parts of your body also. Plus, I'm not really an antiperspirant guy. I'd just rather not smell bad, but still sweat, like have normal bodily functions, and Mando is here for that. So I decided to change things up. I got the starter pack. I got smooth, solid deodorant, acidified cleansing bar, the invisible deodorant cream, and the deodorant wipes. These are a game changer, let me tell you. I have them in my bag all the time. Mando was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And like I mentioned, the deodorant is for the entire body. We're talking about pits, packages, belly buttons, whatever stinky crevices and folds that you have. I know that this is kind of a weird thing to say, but it really does work. Because here's the deal, scientists actually study this stuff. And it turns out Mando is clinically proven to control odor better than a shower with just soap alone. And the scents are great. Bourbon leather, cloverwood, Mount Fuji, and Pro Sport, and unscented varieties too. And the whole thing is powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it starts. We're not just putting fragrance over the fact that you smell bad, we're stopping you from smelling bad in the first place. I switched. I'm never going back. Mando Starter Pack is the perfect pack for new customers. So go to the link below, use my code. My followers will get an additional $5 off. It's $5 off the starter pack plus free shipping for new customers only, and that makes it a total of over 40% off. So hit the link, use the code, and start smelling great. In the small category, let's talk about Antaresia. So this is a genus. There's actually 3 species here. So in my opinion, children's pythons, spotted pythons, and the smallest of all python species, pygmy pythons, sometimes called anthill pythons. But for this entry, I'm gonna talk about spotteds, which are actually the biggest in the Antaresia family because they're usually the easiest to find, and they're, in my opinion, the least cantankerous and easiest to handle without getting popped. Not saying that any of these snakes are gonna want to bite you. In fact, most of them won't. But keep in mind, all snakes with a mouth can bite and all snakes have mouths. The reason I picked spotted pythons is because they're not very big. Usually 3 feet-ish, 4 foot if you get a really big one. And then there's the outliers, which can get 6 feet. Even so, they're not even gonna be close to as thick as this. This is a ball python. We'll talk about this in the medium category as a runner-up. And I can, I have small hands and I can still easily get my hand around the snake. A spotted python, they're gonna be so much smaller. Like the size of, say, a corn snake, which would actually fit in this category too. If you want something that is a colubrid, get a corn snake. They like it cooler. It's easier to take care of. The whole thing. But I just think spotted pythons are a little bit more unique. And there is this movement now among new keepers or keepers in general that want something a little bit different, something a little bit more unique. And a spotted python from Australia, they are semi-arboreal. So you're going to be able to have this really cool enclosure that they're going to use every single inch of. And they eat every time. They're relatively healthy. And I think their uptick in terms of popularity is great if you want to start a breeding project. So spotted pythons, really, they can't go you can't go wrong with a spotted python. Moving on to the medium category, this is probably the most plentiful in terms of realistic animals for most people. A medium-sized snake is something like a ball python. Okay, this snake is about 5 feet, maybe a little bit less, 4-ish feet, something like that. Either way, they can get up to 6 feet, and they can get a little bit thicker than this. But I mean, if you have a 5,000 gram snake, that is the biggest freaking ball python anyone's gonna see. Most of the time, 2,000 grams, 3,000 grams for a big one. So we're talking under 6 pounds, almost always. And they're never gonna get, 7 or 8 feet or anything like that. So your regular ball python works great. The only issues are they do like a little bit more humidity than most people will give them, but I think that's changing and most people know better by now. The eating thing, sometimes they go off food. I mean, Pikachu goes off food for 5 months every year. He doesn't lose any weight. He still breeds for me every year. It's never a problem. And they need a little bit bigger of an enclosure. We're talking about 4 by 2 by 2 in terms of feet, right? So some people think that this is too big for their living space. I don't think 8 square feet is much to ask for, but just keep that in mind. If you want something more unique than a ball python, consider a rainbow boa, around the same size. This is a South American species that is very iridescent, beautiful, gonna eat for you really well. Same size enclosure, but they like it really humid. If you want something that doesn't like it really humid, but is a boa, consider a Sonoran boa, like a leopard boa. I love my leopard boa. I mean, not full grown by any means, but they're gonna get around the same size as a ball python or a Brazilian rainbow boa. It just depends on what you want. Do you want a boa? Do you want a python? And there are some, in my opinion, colubrids that would fit, Taiwan beauty snakes and things like that, but keep in mind, those are gonna be more cantankerous and they're arboreal and just take more space. Moving on to the large category, I think that the one that makes sense here is definitely BCIs and BCC. So boa constrictors, whether a Central American or South American. South Americans generally, by rule, are bigger, have redder tails. Central Americans are more common, they're cheaper, you're gonna have a lot of morphs in there, and they're gonna be a little bit smaller. But either way, expect an animal that could get 8 feet or bigger. Even, also never let your snake do this. He's not trying to harm me, but just for optics, yeah, don't let them do that. So a boa constrictor, they might, be only 6 feet if you get really, really lucky, a small male, but also you might get a big one that's 10 feet, or if you get a South American, they can get up to 14 feet. So they're pretty big. Or maybe you want something more unique. You can have a coastal carpet python. Now, the great thing about carpet pythons is you have some that fit in the medium category, think Irian Jayas, jungles, but you can have a coastal carpet python that gets up to 9 feet. Or if you want something that is a little bit different and your friends definitely don't have, get a Macklats python. The issue with Macklats is you do need to put it in some work in order to get them to be handleable. But once you do, they get rather large. I mean, sometimes 9, 10 feet if you get a really big one, and then they'll just look like this. Other times they look like this, where they're striking at you. So I have one, it's small, we're working on it, it's getting much better. But keep in mind, you can have a great Macklats python that's not gonna bite you, likely, right? They all can bite. Or you can put no work in and then you can have a demon child. So it really depends. Another species I would put in this list maybe are Dumerul's boas. Not their length, although they can get 9 feet for really big females. Generally, they're gonna top out around 6 feet and they're just gonna be really heavy bodied. So you can have a snake that is, shorter, but heavy bodied. Blood python's the same, but Dumerul's boas, in my opinion, are just way better. So I know I gave you a lot of options here, but I wanted to give you something something to think about. And just to round this out with the extra large category, I think there's really only one species I'm gonna put here. You might know what it is. Feel free to guess as I ramble for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Burmese pythons, obviously. Now, Burmese pythons and reticulated pythons are gonna be the main ones in this category. Those are the ones that everyone's gonna think of. And this is a very big preference-based thing, because some of my friends swear by reticulated pythons. That's what they love, that's what they work with. Other people like Burms. Let's put it this way. Do you like German Shepherds or do you like Golden Retrievers? Personally, I like Golden Retrievers because they're dopey, they're slow moving. Well, not slow moving, but like in their brain sometimes they act a little slower. You know, they're not as intense as a German Shepherd, you know? They're playful and they're fun. I mean, this is obviously like, don't hate me. I love all dogs. This is just an example. And to me, Burmese pythons act more like Golden Retrievers, right? I have a Golden, I have Burms. Burmese pythons are really cool and they don't always get really, really big, just like retics, by the way. But Burmese pythons in general, in my experience, have less of a food drive. They're less likely to nail you as you open up the enclosure. They're generally a little bit less difficult to get to a handleable state where you don't have to worry about them so much. Although retics can be great handling animals too. But Burmese pythons, to me, there's morphs, not as many. If you want dwarfs, there are some out there, but there really aren't that many available. And if you want a snake that's gonna get over 10 feet, generally they're almost always gonna get over 10 feet. Now there are examples like the one that you're seeing here. My very pregnant wife is holding this snake and you can see in comparison to how big the snake is, he's about 8 feet, but he's not that dense. So an animal that's 8 feet doesn't look like it's 8 feet. So that's Thunder. And then there's Lightning, who is 9 feet, but way thicker. This animal looks way bigger. And then there's Kratos, my biggest, he's a male, and this guy here is about 13 feet, and let me tell you, he's every bit of 13 feet. He's a big, big boy. And they get bigger than that. You can have 20-foot Burmese pythons, so it just depends on what you want. In all, I would say Burmese pythons are for sure the one that takes the cake. If you want something different, reticulated pythons, African rock pythons, if you're I don't know why you'd want one. Personally, I would never get one myself. And then scrub pythons are a great option too. So how about you? Let me know in the comment section below what your favorite snake for every size is. What size snake is your favorite? As always, thanks so much for hitting like and subscribe. It really helps this channel more than you could ever know. And the Patreon supporters, you guys get videos early, discounts on merch, one-on-ones, love doing those. All that for as little as $1 a month. That's it. I do videos every Monday and Thursday, so I'll see you in the next one.